The last train, I need to tell someone what I saw on the last train, not because I think it'll change anything, but because if I don't get this out, I'm afraid I'll stop believing it happened at all. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I worked the night shift as a track supervisor for the Metropolitan Transit Authority for 3 years. My job was simple. Ride the last northbound train to the end of the line, check for stragglers, make sure nothing got left behind that shouldn't be there. Equipment, bags, people. You'd be surprised how many people fall asleep and wake up in a dark station at 1 in the morning. The train usually emptied out by the 8th stop. By the 10th, it was just me, the conductor, and maybe a janitor or two finishing their shift. We'd hit the end of the line at 1:47 a.m. exactly. I'd do my walk through, radio in my report, and catch the return train back to the yard. Routine, predictable, safe. That's what I thought, anyway. It was a Tuesday in March when things stopped making sense. I remember because Tuesdays were always the quietest. I boarded at Central like always, nodded to Marcus, the conductor I'd worked with for 2 years. The train was almost empty. Just an old woman in a floral dress near the front and a guy in a business suit nodding off near the middle doors. We pulled out right on schedule. By the 4th stop, the old woman was gone. I hadn't seen her get off, but I'd been checking my phone. No big deal. The businessman was still there, head lolling against the window. I could see the faint reflection of the tunnel lights sliding across the glass behind him, that hypnotic rhythm that made you forget where you were going. Then we stopped. Not at a station, between stations. Between the 9th and 10th stops, in the tunnel, where there's no darkney, electrical hum of the rails. The lights inside the train flickered once, twice, then held. I waited for Marcus to come over the intercom with an explanation. Signal malfunction, track obstruction, something, but the intercom stayed silent. I walked up to the conductor's cabin and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Through the small window, I could see Marcus sitting in his seat, hands on the controls, completely still. I tried the door, locked. I called his name. Nothing. He wasn't moving at all, not even breathing that I could tell. Just sitting there, staring straight ahead into the tunnel like he was waiting for something. That's when I noticed the businessman was gone too. I turned around fast, scanning the empty car. He'd been there 30 seconds ago. I'd seen him. The train hadn't moved, the doors hadn't opened, but ici no événement. Just empty, like no one had ever been sitting there at all. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that electric wasp sound that gets inside your skull. I stood there in the middle of the car, feeling my pulse in my throat, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. People don't just vanish. Conductors don't just freeze. Trains don't just stop in the middle of tunnels for no reason. Then the intercom crackled to life. But it wasn't Marcus's voice. It was a recording. Old, scratchy, like it had been transferred from tape to many times. A woman's voice, flat and procedural. Attention passengers. This is the last train. Please remain seated. We will be arriving at our final destination shortly. This is the last train. The message repeated. Same words. Same inflection. Like a loop that had been playing for years and no one had bothered to turn it off. I grabbed my radio and called dispatch. Static. I tried again. More static, but underneath it something else. Faint, rhythmic. almost like breathing, but not quite human. I switched channels, same thing, every channel. Just static and the awful sound underneath. The train lurched forward, no warning. Just a sudden jolt that nearly knocked me off my feet. We were moving again, picking up speed, faster than we should have been going in a tunnel. The lights outside the windows blurred into one continuous streak. I stumbled back to my seat and held on as the train rattled through the darkness, the metal screaming against the rails. We should have reached the 10th station in under a minute, but we didn't stop. We just kept going and going into a part of the tunnel I'd never seen before, even though I'd ridden this line hundreds of times. The walls looked older here, stained with something dark that might have been rust. Or might not have been. I checked my watch. 1:47 a.m., exactly when we should have been pulling into the end of the line. But we weren't there. We were somewhere else. Somewhere that didn't exist on any map I'd ever seen. That's when I saw the figure on the platform. We were passing through a station. Not one of ours. The tile was wrong, cracked and ancient, covered in grime. The lights overhead were those old incandescent bulbs, most of them dead. And standing under one of the working ones, perfectly still, was a man in a transit uniform, old style. The kind they stopped using in the 70s. He was staring directly at the train as we passed, not moving, not blinking, just watching. And as we pulled away, I saw him lift one hand in a slow, deliberate wave. The train began to slow. I could feel it in my stomach, that sickening deceleration. We were stopping again. Antitime à la station. That station. The one that shouldn't exist. The platform lights grew brighter as we approached, and I could see more details now. Advertisements on the walls, faded and peeling. A bench, a trash can overflowing with something I couldn't identify, and people. Filles of thème, standing in a line along the platform, Evan Lispas said, all facing the train, all wearing clothes from different decades. A woman in a 60s dress, a man in an 80s tracksuit, a teenager in 90s skate shoes, all of them perfectly still, all of them staring. The train stopped. The doors opened with that familiar hiss, and none of them moved. I pressed myself against the back wall of the car, as far from the doors as I could get. My breath was coming fast and shallow. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The doors were open. The people on the platform were just standing there, waiting. For what? For me to get off, for something else. Then one of them stepped forward, the woman in the 60s dress. She moved like she was walking through water, slow and deliberate. She reached the edge of the platform and stopped, her eyes locked on mine, and she smiled, not a friendly smile, not a threatening smile. Just a smile that said she knew something I didn't, something I was about to learn. She stepped onto the train. The lights flickered. And when they came back on, she was standing in the middle of the car, 10 feet away from me. I hadn't seen her walk. She just appeared there, like a skip in a video. She tilted her head to one side, studying me. "You're early," she said. Her voice was wrong. Too many layers, like 3 people speaking at once, slightly out of sync. It's not time yet. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. I just stared at her, at the others now filing onto the train behind her, moving in that same underwater way. They filled the car, standing in the aisles, holding the poles sitting in the seats. All of them staring at me with that same empty expression. The doors closed. The train began to move. I don't know how long we traveled. Time stopped meaning anything. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. The tunnel outside looked the same, endless. The people around me didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. They just stood there, swaying slightly with the motion of the train, their eyes never leaving me. Then I saw the logbook. It was on the floor near my feet, like it had just appeared there, old, leather-bound, water-damaged. I picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. Pages were filled with handwritten entry, dos enoftem, all in writing. Dates going back decades. And they all said the same thing, more or less. March 15th, 1973, last train, conductor unresponsive. Passengers vanished, arrived at unknown station, saw them waiting, they boarded. The entry ended there, the pen trailing off into a scribble. October 3rd, 1989, it happened again. Just like the report said it would. The old station, the people, they're not people. There, another unfinished sentence. January 22nd, 2003. I read the logbook before my shift. I thought it was a prank. It's not. God help me. It's not. If anyone finds this, don't ride the last train. Don't. I flipped to the most recent entry. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. The date was from 6 months ago. They don't want us to leave. They need us to ride, to keep the line running, to keep them moving. If the last train stops running, they stop moving. And if they stop moving, they start spreading. I've seen the maps in the conductor's cabin. The real maps. The ones that show where this tunnel actually goes. It doesn't go anywhere. It just circles, forever, feeding them. Feeding it. The system. The entry ended with a single word, written so hard the pen had torn through the paper. Run. I looked up. The woman in the 60s dress was standing directly in front of me now, close enough to touch. Behind her, the others had moved closer too, forming a circle around me. Their faces were still blank, but something was changing. The skin was starting to look loose, like it didn't quite fit, like it was something they were wearing. Time to get off, the woman said in that layered voice. End of the line. The train was slowing again. I could see lights ahead, a platform. But not the one from before. This one was newer, cleaner, familiar. It was the 10th station, the actual end of the line, my stop. The train stopped, the doors opened, and the people around me stepped back, creating a path to the exit. An invitation. Or a test. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. Through the doors, onto the platform Upezester, through the turnstiles. I ran until I hit the street, into the cold March air, under the streetlights and the empty sky. I didn't stop until I was 10 blocks away, gasping for air, my hands on my knees. When I finally looked back, the station entrance was dark. No lights, no sign it was even open. Like it had closed years ago, and everyone had forgotten it was there. I called in sick the next night, and the night after that. A week later, I quit. Didn't give notice. Just stopped showing up. I couldn't explain why. What was I going to say? That I'd ridden a ghost train, that I'd seen people who weren't people. They would have thought I'd lost it. Maybe I had. But here's the thing. A month after I quit, I saw a news report about a transit worker who'd gone missing. Last seen boarding the last northbound train from Central. They found his radio on an empty train at the end of the line, still on, still transmitting, just static. And underneath the static, that breathing sound, I looked him up, checked his employee record through a friend who still worked there. He'd been a track supervisor, night shift, same route I used to work. Same job. He'd found a logbook in his locker a week before he disappeared. Left a note saying he was going to ride the train and document everything. Prove it was real. They never found him. Last week, I got a package in the mail, no return address. Inside was that same leather logbook, waterlogged and worn. I almost threw it away without opening it. But I didn't. I opened it to the last page, and there was a new entry. Recent, the ink was still wet. It's still running. There, still waiting. And there's a new supervisor starting next week. Someone has to ride the last train. The system needs it. Don't try to stop it. Don't try to warn them. They won't believe you. No one ever does. And then, at the bottom, in handwriting I recognized as my own even though I never wrote it, see you soon. I haven't been back to that subway line. I don't even go underground anymore. But some nights, when it's quiet, premier qu'on arrive distant, the city, the sound of a train that never stops running, carrying passengers who never get off, going nowhere, forever, and I know, eventually, I'll have to ride it again. Because once you've been on the last train, you're part of the route, part of the system. And the system always completes its loop. They're waiting for me. At that station that doesn't exist, on that platform outside of time. And one night, when I'm not paying attention, when I'm tired and lost in thought, I'll board the wrong train, and the doors will close behind me. And I'll look up and see them standing there, swaying with the rhythm of the rails. And I'll realize I never got off at all. I've been riding the whole time. We all have. This is the last train. Please remain seated. We'll be arriving at our final destination shortly.